You know, before I get into the meat of this video, there's a few things that I need to say up front that will, of course, serve as the intro to this masterpiece. Now, on the other day, I believe it was on Wednesday or Thursday, I tried to produce an intro to this whole fiasco surrounding one Pastor Joel Osteen, which is really an oxymoron, but I'm gonna deal with that later in the video. And because of circumstances that was out of my control, I wasn't able to really give you an overview like I normally like to do. You know, I come with a politically correct version, and then when I take it to the whole, I send it down right the center of the plate. And I wasn't really able to do that in the video that I showed y'all the other day, so I'm gonna do that in this video. And then, as you know, that I'm going to, for y'all's holiday, I'm going to do a trilogy dealing with Joel Osteen and a few other topics. I'm not going to tell y'all what they are. You have to request the holiday trilogy to get it. But one of the videos is going to deal with this unedited, unscripted version. You know what it is, second nature, breathing. Send me email, I'll send you the link. Also, I want to get those videos out the way because I have every intention to view the Florida State-Alabama football game that comes on tonight. These are two powerhouse football teams. This is football. These are football teams. This is a major league heavyweight bout. The first game of the season. I got to see that. So I'm going to get those videos out the way so I can sit back and smoke me a cigar and watch these two heavyweights go at it. Florida State, Alabama. Now in this video here, and you've seen the title. And as you know how it is, you have become accustomed to how I do things. And in my public videos that I put on my public channel, I just paint the corners of the plate. I just, give you a few things to think about that will be covered in detail in the whole. So that's basically what I'm doing in this video. But before I get to Pastor Joel Osteen, and again, that is an oxymoron. I'll explain that in a minute. Let me say this. And if you follow me, if you watch my videos, you know this. I have an axe to grind when it comes down to pastors. I mean, I don't make no secret about this. And I'm reminded of, since Hurricane Katrina, the anniversary was when Hurricane Harvey hit. I'm reminded back, and if you remember this, how everybody got on George Bush. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. There were some mistakes that was made. We have to own up to that. But before those mistakes can even be dealt with, before those mistakes were even allowed to be made, people were immediately jumping the chain of command, because you have a chain of command. You have a mayor, you have a governor, who then communicates with the president. But you remember during Hurricane Katrina, Kanye Mess. He was on an MTV MTV Awards show. I can't remember which one it was, but y'all remember this. And Kanye West, during Hurricane Katrina, immediately went to George W. Bush, and he made the statement, George Bush don't care about black people. And that was a big to-do, that he would take that national stage and criticize the president of the United States for leaving black people stranded during Hurricane Katrina. And I found that to be most ironic. That Kanye mess, again, just bypassed the chain of command. Because remember now, you had a black mayor, Mayor Nagger, who's currently serving time in prison. You had a black mayor. You had endless black churches. And Kanye mess didn't suggest none of them failed black people. He went right to the president. George W. Bush don't care about black people. Well, wait a minute, Kanye, what about the black mayor? Does he care about black people? Does he hold any accountability for leaving these people stranded, wading through waist-deep shit water on their roof? Does he accept any accountability for that? Because you got a Negro mayor, you would think that he would be in tune. But Kanye mess superseded and bypassed the black mayor. He bypassed all of those black churches right there in New Orleans, who every Sunday are packed with black women and black pastors in their $6,000 suits and their nice expensive shoes, driving their nice expensive cars, because of course we know they don't stay in that area where the hurricane hit, because that was a black area, and we know that these black pastors are not staying around black people. He will pastor a church around black people, but I got to live next to my friends, white folk. So he stayed far removed from y'all, and y'all cool with that. And I know y'all wondering what's that got to do with Harvey. It's one and the same. And I'm like I said, I'm going to just tickle the corners right now, but we're going to deal with this. I'm going to give you some things to expect when we go down in the hole. But the Negroes bypass the black mayor. They bypass all of those black churches, because you walk down a black community, you're going to bump into 5 or 6 churches on one block. Sometimes these morgues stand right next door to each other. You look across the street, there's a church. You look down the street, there's a church. You're standing in front of the street. There's 3 that you just passed. They're all over the place. So now when you talk about the failure of being able to remove these people and leaving them stranded in that Hurricane Katrina, the Negroes immediately bypassed the black mayor, bypassed the black pastors, bypassed the governor, and went right to the president. He is the only one that don't care about black people. See, this is the logic of this Negro. You got to understand this. Because it's one and the same when it comes down to Hurricane Harvey. It's the same. There's essentially no difference. And the reason why there's no difference when you look at a Joel Osteen and a black pastor is because the black pastor learns the tools of the trade, the tricks of the trade. Where does he learn that shit? He learns that shit from who? From a white pastor. It is these white pastors who are the ones who teach at these Baptist theological cemeteries. And it's in these Baptist theological seminaries. It's Freudian slip. It is these white pastors who teach at these Baptist theological seminaries where many of these Negroes attend to learn the tools of the trade. Because this shit is all orchestrated. Nothing is done by happenstance. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in case you don't know. You'll notice, and this is a side note, you'll notice if you ever attend one of those morgues, because I don't go to church. I don't go. The last time I've been inside a black church was in 2011. And the only reason why I went inside that church in 2011 is because that was when my mother died. Her funeral was inside one of those morgues. And that's the only reason why I went in, 2011. The only time that I've been in one of those morgues before 2011 was back in 1997. And the reason why, again, the only reason why I went inside that morgue in 1997 is because that's where my father's funeral was held. He was held inside of a church. So between 97, 2011, I don't go in those institutions. I don't go in them. I'm not going inside. Don't ask me. It's not happening. I know what is. I know what's up. No, I'm not. No, not me. But if you go to those morgues, what you will notice is that every time the black pastor, and again, like I said, I'm going to just tickle the plate. We'll deal with this straight down the middle in the hole. But I'm going to just give you some things to think about. You'll notice that when you go inside that church and it's time to raise the offering, when it's time to pay that tithe, that 10% that pastor is always telling people, we want off the rip, that we want 10% of your gross, not your take home. You have to understand this. Right after Uncle Sam get his, that pastor want his, and he wants that off the gross, not what you take home. And there's some churches that I told y'all that require their members to turn in their pay stubs so that they can see for sure what it is that you make, so we can make sure you're paying us 10% off the gross. But you'll notice that whenever they start talking about raising these tithes and offerings, who's ever on the organ will start playing sad music. You'll notice this. And they'll start playing sad music. And what the pastor will do is he will start talking about death. He'll start talking about the end of life. When this life is over and you stand before God in judgment, will you be able to tell God that you didn't rob from him because you gave him? And he does this because this is all orchestrated. He learns this from those theological cemeteries that he attends that are taught by these white preachers. And they tell him, listen, you have to tug on people's heartstrings to get them to reach into their pocket. It's actually like they're connected. There's a string that's connected to the heart and the person's arm that will immediately make them go into their pocket, into their wallet. When you start talking about death, the afterlife, when you stand before God, you don't want to rob God. So at that point, when he got people thinking about standing before God, he can go on and tell y'all, listen, by the way, I don't want anything that clinks. I want that money that folds. He can tell y'all that. Because now he got y'all thinking about standing before God. And you thinking about what you did last night. You think about what you did this morning. Yeah, I want God to forgive me. So you reach into your pocket. You think you can buy your way and buy forgiveness. This is what they do to y'all. This is the game they play with y'all. This is what these black pastors learn from these white pastors like a Joel Osteen, who, again, is an oxymoron. I'm about to deal with that in a minute. Because they are designed to manipulate y'all. This is what happens. So it comes as no surprise that these guys don't have any kind of human compassion for you, because you would think that they would. I mean, you would think that they would when you take into consideration that your example is Jesus. Y'all's example is Jesus. So the Christian says, I'm Christ-like, meaning that I'm molding my life after Jesus Christ. This is what y'all say. I'm not saying this. This is what y'all say. And since y'all are saying that because I mold my life after Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is my example, then all I have to do to understand whether or not you're living by the concepts or the precepts or what is taught in that Bible, all I have to do in any given situation is look and see what Jesus would do. Since you're saying I'm Christ-like, I'm a Christian, I'm following Jesus Christ. And since you're following Jesus Christ, then all I have to do in any given situation, no matter what it is, all I have to do is look to see what Jesus would have done. And then if you're doing the opposite of what I know Jesus would have done in a given situation, it's at that point I can tell you, you are a hypocrite. Because why? Because what you profess with your mouth does not align itself with your behavior. So when the pastor who says, I'm Christ-like, robs from his congregation, the pastor who says, I'm Christ-like, sleeps with women in the church, the pastor who says, I'm Christ-like, won't open his doors to people wading through chest-deep shit water, then it's not rocket science. No, dude, you are a hypocrite. Nothing else needs to be explained. You are the one that said you Christ-like. I didn't say that. You said that. Now, if you never professed to be a Christian and you had a facility and you didn't want to open it, it is what it is. I mean, we can still morally say we think you're wrong, but we can't condemn you because hey, I ain't no Christian. It is what it is. But when you have these individuals like a Joel Osteen, like these black pastors, who go out of their way to tell you we are Christ-like, and then all you have to, it goes back to what Jesus said. I've done a video on this. I've done a video on this where y'all's Jesus asked his disciples, hey, listen, man, let me ask y'all something. Can a bad tree produce good fruit? That's what Jesus asked his disciples. I ain't say that. Jesus, y'all Jesus, the one that y'all see, y'all believe in. He asked his disciples, can a bad tree produce good fruit? His disciples said, no, of course a bad tree can't produce good fruit. And then he asked his disciples, can a good tree produce bad fruit? I mean, it basically what he was asking them was to become fruit inspectors. So now all you have to do is just look at the fucking fruit. I mean, it baffles me when I get in conversations with Christians, and I'm talking about family members. And I get in conversations with them, and they get upset with me because I'm so hard on these pastors. And I'm trying to tell them all I'm doing is what your Jesus told his disciples to do. Look at the fruit. If you want to know what kind of a tree it is, look at the fruit. If you go in your yard and you see apples on the limbs, apples on the ground, then it don't take no scientist to conduct an experiment to tell you that is an apple tree. How do you know that's an apple tree? Look at the fruit. That's a pear tree. How? How can you say that? There's pears on the limbs, there's pears on the ground. That's a pear tree. It doesn't take rocket science to figure this shit out. You are a hypocrite. How can you say that? Look at your fruit. It's a flood and you're not opening your doors to people who are in need and you say you're a Christian. Look at your fruit. That's all you have to do. It don't require a lot of rocket science to figure this shit out. And then I'm going to get to the fact that that's why I kept telling y'all, when I said Pastor Joel Osteen and I said that's an oxymoron, because it is an oxymoron. Because you would think that most pastors, according to what they say, they were called to preach by God. The Lord spoke to me and told me to preach. Okay, whatever. I mean, I'm suspect of that, but that's just me. I'll deal with that in another video. I'm always suspect of people who come to me and tell me, well, the Lord told me to tell you thus and so. I'm always suspect of that. I'm always suspect of that. Don't that God have my number? I tell you what you do. You go back to that God and you tell that God, well, he didn't want to listen to me. He told me to tell you, you contact him yourself. That's right. Don't deliver no message for me for God. Go back to your God and tell him to deliver that message himself. I'm always suspect of that, but that's just me. I'm funny like that. But anyway, the Negroes say that the Lord called him to preach. Stand up on Sunday, he announced to the church, the Lord is putting on my heart to preach. I want to preach the gospel. And immediately he goes through this whole process. He gets licensed and ordained so he can marry, he can perform funerals, he can, do all of the stuff that these clergies do. He's now tax exempt, which is the biggest thing, but subject for another video. And he can go off and run around with the clergy collar on and, I'm a preacher, blah, 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 blah. But now, in the case of one Pastor Joel Osteen, again, oxymoron. And why do I say that? And most of these Negroes that you see on Facebook quoting Joel Osteen, putting up posts of his on their Facebook page, most of them don't even know this. But the church that Pastor Osteen pastors, and I use that term extremely loosely, and you'll see why in a minute, because I'm going to tell you why. His father pastored that church. His father was the pastor. Can't recall his name. His father died. Now, Joel Osteen was not a preacher. Joel Osteen wasn't even sitting in the pulpit. I believe he was over their music ministry. Don't quote me on that. But he was doing something else in the church. It wasn't preaching. He wasn't even a preacher. When his father passed away, the board came to Joel and told him, we want you to take over. Now keep in mind, now he's not a preacher. He hasn't been called to preach. He was doing, and I believe it was the music ministry, but again, don't quote me on that. Go look it up for yourself. But he was doing something else in the church. It wasn't preaching. The board asked Joel Osteen to take over as pastor because of the death of his father. And he agreed to do it. So now he becomes Pastor Joel Osteen. A man who the board called not God. So now when you look at his behavior, and we ain't even talk about those warmed over homilies from the Reader's Digest that he calls sermons. I mean, that in of itself is problematic, but that's a subject for another video. I mean, those jokes that he's always cracking. He's a jokester, and he's, reading, canned sermons, Reader's Digest, warmed over homilies. This is what he calls preaching. And y'all call it preaching too, because there's a lot of y'all that watch this dude. But this is a guy that was not even called by God. By y'all's God. This is what y'all say y'all believe. He wasn't even called by God. And you don't take my word on nothing that I'm telling you. All you got to do is do your own research. This is a farce. This is a joke. So when Pastor, quote unquote, Joel Osteen waits, when a hurricane of that magnitude descends on that city, and keep in mind now, Joel Osteen, his church is the old Houston Rockets, where they played at before they built their new stadium. That's a stadium that his church is in. That's an old basketball stadium where a professional basketball team used to play. That's what he has as his church. And as this hurricane descends on the city, this man of God has to wait till he is asked to use his facility. Now, again, we have to come back now to what I just told you. Look at the fruit. What would Jesus do? Would Jesus have said, listen, I'm going to wait till y'all ask me? Or would he have offered? Listen, my building, send them here. Let them come here. Not 96 hours after the hurricane hits, Joel. Jesus would have done that prior to. And this is the reason why Jesus told his disciples, listen, look at their fruit. That's all you got to do. Become a fruit inspector. And this is what I tell pastors. This is what I tell preachers. This is what I tell Christians. I'm not judging nobody. I'm looking at your fruit. And your fruit would tell me who and what you are. And the fact you had to wait 96 hours, dude, 96 hours while people are struggling for their lives, and you call yourself a man of God, and you didn't offer that prior to, nah, man, come on now, stop. We got to call that what that is, but I'm gonna back up because I feel myself going in. I'm gonna hold that for the whole. I told you I'm gonna just tickle the plate here. I'm gonna just tickle the sides of the plate, and then when I deal in the hole, I'm gonna give it to you straight down the middle. Because this is the same thing that I say the black pastors and the black preachers who claim that they love these people, who claim that they love black people so much. I have so much love for black people. And again, I have to go back and quote y'all's Jesus. When Jesus asked Peter, Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yeah, Lord, you know I love you. You know, you my cat. And Jesus, according to y'all's Bible, asked Peter again, don't play with me, Peter, man. Tell me the truth, man. Do you really love me? And Peter said, why do you keep asking me that? You know I love you. I mean, come on now. I just told you I love you. And he said, listen, feed my sheep. And then he asked Peter a third time. And according to your Bible, Peter became irritated. Man, why do you keep asking me, do I love you? I told you 3 times, yes, I love you. And he told you, feed my sheep. If you love me, then feed them. And this is the same thing that I say to these pastors. Dude, love is an action word. I mean, you can't just run off at your mouth and say you love the folks, but then when we look at your behavior, it contradicts what you just said. Man will not treat you right. That man will not teach you right. And this is what black people have failed to come to grasp when it comes down to these black pastors. There is a correlation in what you profess from your mouth, how you treat people, and what you teach them. If you will not treat them with respect, then how the hell can you expect them to teach you anything that's going to benefit you, that's going to help you? If a man will not treat you right, he ain't going to teach you right. And black folks have failed to grasp this about this black pastor. This is the reason why I started off with the Hurricane Katrina, because that represents a catastrophic failure on the part of the black church. And the fact that black people went and blamed George Bush, which again, to be fair, there was some blame for him, but that had to come later. The people that y'all should have been blaming up front was the black pastors, those black churches, that black mayor. And in this case, with Hurricane Harvey, here you have it once again. And it's not a black pastor this time, it's a white pastor. So you see, essentially, there's no difference. Both of these individuals claim to be following this Christ, following this Jesus. And all we have to do is understand, what would Jesus do? And when we see you not doing what we know Jesus would have done in any given situation, it's at that point that we can call you what you are, a fucking hypocrite. And that's what Joel Osteen is. That's what these black pastors and preachers are. And that's just the way that goes. But I'm going to back off because I'm going to deal with that in the whole. You know what it is. Email, I'll send you the link.